This is the Camp Iron Mountain Podcast, a place to learn about U.S. military history as told through the stories of service members, military units, and supporting civilians. Join us as we work to preserve their memories for future generations. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Camp Iron Mountain Podcast. I'm your host, Gabriel Suarez. We have a great show for you today, where we're going to learn about one of the most important documents from a veteran's time in the military, the Official Military Personnel File. According to the National Archives, the Official Military Personnel File, or OMPF, is primarily an administrative record. It contains critical information about a veteran's service history, such as the date and type of enlistment or appointment, duty stations and assignments, training, qualifications, performance, awards and decorations they received, any disciplinary actions, insurance, emergency data, and most importantly, the dates and type of separation, discharge, and retirement the veteran received. When using this record in your research, it's important to know that you will not find detailed information about a veteran's participation in battle or other military engagements. Physical records are held by the National Archives and become archival 62 years after the service member's separation from the military. This is a rolling date. So for example, the current year, 2021. You take 2021 minus 62 years, and it's 1959. Records with the discharge date of 1959 or prior are archival and are open to the public. Records with the discharge date of 1960 or after are non-archival and are maintained under the Federal Records Center program. Non-archival records are subject to access restrictions. Generally, the veteran or the next of kin, if the veteran is deceased, has full authorization to release the records. The public has access to certain military service information without the veteran's authorization or that of the next of kin. Example of information that could be released without the veteran's or next of kin's authorization are the service member's name, service number, dates of service, branch of service, final duty status, final rank, assignments, geographic locations, military education levels, pictures, transcripts of court-martial trials, place of entrance and separation. But according to the Freedom of Information Act, most information in a federal non-archival official personnel folder is not releasable to the general public without written consent. Without the consent of the veteran or a next of kin if the veteran is deceased, the National Personnel Records Center can only release limited information from the OMPF to the general public. You are considered a member of the general public if 1. You are not the veteran, 2. Asking about a veteran who is of no relation to you, or 3. You seek information about a veteran who is a relative, but for whom you are not the next of kin. The National Archives defines the next of kin as any of the following: an unmarried widow or widower, son, daughter, father, mother, brother or sister of the deceased veteran. Such access is intended to strike a balance between the public's right to obtain information from federal records, as outlined in the Freedom of Information Act, and the veteran's right to privacy as defined by the Privacy Act. To request a copy of a veteran's OMPF, you can go to the National Archives website, where there is a link to their online request form. Also included on the site are frequently asked questions, expected timelines of responses, and any potential costs. A point of caution beforehand for any of our audience who are interested in requesting an OMPF for a family member, relative, or other veteran they are researching. On July 12, 1973, a disastrous fire at the National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis destroyed approximately 16 to 18 million OMPFs. The records lost were primarily those of former members of the Army, the Army Air Force, and the Air Force who served between 1912 and 1963. None of the records that were destroyed in the fire had any duplicate copies, nor had they been copied to microfilm at the time. No index of those records were made prior to the fire, and millions of the records were on loan to the VA at the time. This has made it difficult, almost impossible, to precisely determine which records were lost. A link to the article Burnt in Memory, Looking Back, Looking Forward at the 1973 St. Louis Fire by Marta G. O'Neill and William Siebert, both archivists at the National Archives, is included in the show notes. To provide our listeners with an example of what you might find in one of these archived OMPFs, I have recruited two of my younger cousins, Anthony and Andrew Paez, to join me in going through our grandfather's OMPF for the first time. For a little context, both of my cousins are also Army veterans. Anthony is about 10 years younger than I am, while Andrew is about 15 years younger. Anthony served with the 4th Infantry Division at Fort Carson, Colorado, back in the late 2000s, completing a combat deployment to Iraq. Andrew served most recently, getting out of the Army in 2017. He did his time with the 1st Infantry Division at Fort Riley, Kansas, completing a deployment to Kuwait and Jordan during his time in service. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Visuals of our grandfather's OMPF documents discussed during the podcast are also uploaded to our show's YouTube channel. The link can be found on our website at campironmountain.com and in the show notes. Okay, and now I'd like to welcome to the show my two cousins, Anthony Paez and Andrew Paez. Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going okay. How are you?
Doing good. How about you, Andrew?
Doing pretty good. How about you guys?
Not too bad.
Okay. Like I said earlier, I wanted to invite both of you on the show to go over Grandpa Greg's OMPF. You guys are a lot younger than me and didn't get a chance to spend as much time with him growing up like I did. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to learn about his background together by digging through his military file. As we go through his paperwork, feel free to give me any thoughts or reactions you have upon reading it.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. Starting from the beginning, the first main piece of information that's in the file is his DD-214, or Report of Separation from the Armed Services, which is a form they still use today for all of us who leave. Some of the key information they have on there is he separated honorable discharge. He was in the U.S. Marine Corps. He left the service as a corporal. His MOS, or occupational specialty in the service, was an automobile mechanic. His term of service was from June 1952 to, looks like, June 1955. Did 3 years on active duty with the Marines, 1 year, 4 months, and 20 days overseas. He did training in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina for his auto mechanic school, and he was given some separation pay upon discharge. Looks like about $318 for separation pay and a travel allowance of $27, which is a lot less than we would get in nowadays. Did you guys get any travel or separation pay when you guys left the service?
Yeah, I actually got a couple grand, I think, when I left.
That's about what I would have received too if I would have finished out the paperwork. Procrastination is
Yeah.
I think I pocketed like half of that money, from like a little bit more than half of that for myself after moving everything from Colorado to Arizona.
Okay. Oh, did you move yourself? Is that you saved a lot of the money? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we moved ourselves from Kansas to California with it was crazy how we had to do it too, because we had just gotten a Ford Focus. It was 2006. We had the two pits. My mom and dad had just came down. They flew down. They didn't have a car. So, and then Becca was pregnant with Marley at the time. And my dad had jerry rig a trailer hitch to a sedan. So that was fun. That was a fun ride.
I remember your dad sending me a text. He's like, "Hey, could I put a trailer hitch on this kind of car?"
You guys just didn't do the U-Haul, man. They'll put a hitch on anything, right?
Oh, he got it on there. just fine. He bored some holes out in the rear bumper and got it in there just fine. And it pulled that U-Haul all the way to California.
Yeah, the next piece of paper in his file is his enlistment contract, which is all of one page, which is so much easier than the ones we had to sign. Some of the key information on here showed he was born in Brawley, California. His birth date of May 9th, 1933. He was living in Salida, California, which is, I think, a small farming town just around Modesto, somewhere in the valley. He enlisted at the Marine Recruiting Station in San Francisco on June 13th, 1952. He came in as a private and then was assigned to the Marine Corps Recruit Depot down in San Diego, California for basic training. Says he enlisted for 3 years on active duty, and then his oath of enlistment is the same 60 years later that we take today.
One thing I want to point out on here is I realized he also put down for his race as Caucasian.
Mine says the same thing. I'm pretty sure yours does too.
Well, yeah. Given the fact, my mom being predominantly Caucasian, my dad being Hispanic.
Yeah, I think it's they don't consider it Hispanic a race. So I think even for the forms back then, it was like Caucasian, Negro, and other. I think were the only 3 choices that they had on.
I just thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think all my discharge paperwork say the same thing.
Yeah, mine says, but then it says like
It's kind of whatever I guess the form says.
Yeah.
All right. So part of his enlistment paperwork, they had his questions, I guess, by his recruiter. Nothing out of the ordinary that they don't do today. Have you been rejected previously for trying to enlist? Have you been arrested, served any jail time? Those type of things. The biggest thing on here, though, was the highest grade that he reached. It says he completed school through the 8th grade, and that was it.
I mean, sounds about right. I don't think very many people had much of an education back then.
It wasn't like as much of a big deal as it is now.
Yeah.
It was either, when you needed to work, they needed you to work, especially if you had like family farms and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know his family worked on the farms down in the Imperial Valley. So 8th grade, 12 years old, thanks a lot for playing, and you're in the fields with everyone else.
Yeah.
I mean, that pretty much gets you the basics of reading, writing, and math.
Yeah. Other enlistment products, he filled out his DD Form 93, which is strikingly similar to the same ones we still use today, which is a record of emergency data for armed forces of the United States, which this form basically designates the person to contact in the event of emergency, that the service has to contact your next of kin or whoever you designate, and then also whoever you designate for insurance benefits or pay if you happen to get killed or died on active duty or during the service. So
yeah.
On here, as you guys can see, he wasn't married at the time. He put person to be notified in case of emergency is Jesus Paez, which is his brother or our Uncle Jesse. He wasn't married. Grandpa wasn't married. He didn't have any children. They don't have his mother or father's name on here because they were both deceased at the time of his enlistment. And then he identified his sister as the main beneficiary for any death gratuity that may happen if he happened to die on duty. So that was Matilda Paez with a backup of Guadalupe Oropeza, her half-sister. They put it stepsister, but it's his half-sister.
Uh-huh.
And then basic form information that we all fill out. All right. The last piece of paperwork for the enlistment contract, pretty vague. It's just one of those, hey, here's a form, fill out. Have you ever been part of any of these groups? Write yes, no. If you answer yes to any of them, then you probably can join the service.
Yeah.
This is, although it's a benign form, which is, they call it the Loyalty Certificate for Personnel of the Armed Forces. For me, it actually tells me a lot. This is actually one of the few, I think, document I found in this file reading through it, which provides context for the era which he lived through. which during the 50s, during the early parts of the Cold War.
Communism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was just at the...
Yeah, my eyes went straight to the espionage part in there. But like my eye caught that perfectly. And I was like, this is the beginning of the Cold War.
Yeah, and it's part of
World War II.
Part of the Red Scare
Yes.
Here in the States.
Yes.
I was kind of highlighting some of the legalese in this form. They talked about if you failed to divulge your association with any of these organizations, you could be charged. What kills me a little bit is, part of the Red Scare, you read about it, but you really didn't see too much of how much it affected people in the country at the time. Yeah, just going through the list of people they have on here, or the list of organizations they have on here, a lot of them, you see the racism as part of the the country at the time as well. They labeled a lot of things, communists. There were obviously some pretty good ones that are the Communist Party of the United States, pretty straightforward of what they are.
Yeah.
But they just have a list of others that were actually like civil rights organizations that the federal government at the time blanketly threw that label of communist on them.
Yeah.
To try to discredit the civil rights movement at the time. So, there's some organizations I highlighted on here were, the Civil Rights Congress, the Council on African Affairs, Jewish People's Fraternal Order, Jewish People's Committee, the National Negro Congress, American Jewish Labor Council, the American League Against War and Fascism, the Industrial Workers of the World, which was a labor union, a really big labor union. Civil rights organizations and labor unions were labeled as communist during this time. And then out of all those dozens of organizations, they have the few Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah.
Just a very small portion of them were, anti-racist. Reading up on this separately, I saw that it was basically, hey, whoever the attorney general wanted to put on this list, they just put on the list.
Yeah.
So people that caused the government trouble, they just
list
labeled
is
on
just so long too.
Communist. Yeah. There's a lot of names on that list.
Yeah. But yeah, so for me, that was probably one of the more interesting things to really understand, the times of which he enlisted in.
Yeah.
It's more than just, the vague paperwork, which we kind of all go through with the military, but that really provides some context and this type of items you can find in these files, depending on the era that you get a file for. Yeah, so the last paperwork I see in the recruiting packet that's in this file, basically his orders, once he signed up, they gave him orders to report down to San Diego, to the Marine Recruit Depot. Here's some money for transportation, meal, bus tickets. What I found interesting in this list of details on his orders was that they actually said, hey, you are also in charge of these two other yahoos that just showed up, and you guys are all supposed to
travel together,
make your way down to San Diego, and you're in charge of these two other guys that also enlisted. And it looked like both of them were from Guam, so they had to ride probably by boat to San Francisco. And then, they said, hey, Grandpa Greg, you're the lead private for these guys, and you're in charge of all making it down there on time. So, can you imagine doing that? I mean, how was your guys' trip to basic after you enlisted in the Army? Were you guys just thrown on a bus, or how did you guys get there?
My recruiter took me to MEPS. The next morning I woke up. We finished everything we needed to. They gave me a bus ride to the airport, said here's some money for some food, and off to Fort Knox I went. And then once we got there, there was an NCO. He wasn't a drill sergeant. He rounded us all up, took us to Fort Knox, and then, we started in processing from there.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how it pretty much was for us. We stayed at the Doubletree Hotel in Sacramento, over there by the Arden Fair. And the same thing, they took us to the airport after MEPS and all that, gave us some money for food and all that, and off we went to, Fort Benning, yeah?
Yeah, but you weren't put in charge of anybody,
No.
right?
No,
definitely not.
No, but I did travel with one dude all the way to Kentucky, but he was a Cav Scout, so he went elsewhere once we got there.
Gross.
Yeah, I can only imagine, like, here's your bus tickets, here's some train tickets, and don't get lost.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Oh, and by the way, you're in charge of these two guys that are from a district of the United States or territory.
Okay, for the second part of his OMPF, which is really the meat and potatoes of his military service, is this what they call a a NAVMC 118 personnel packet, which I'm assuming it's basically Navy, Marine Corps, whatever form 118. Going through this has pretty much everything about Grandpa's service, 3 years on active service in the Marines. So first off, I think it's the money shot. It's when you get one of these files, you're lucky to get a picture of your relative.
Mhm.
And that was pretty cool. I don't think I've seen many pictures, if any, of Grandpa when he was a young man, but 17 years old, and there's his shot a day or so after arriving at
I think
boot
the
camp.
youngest before I've seen this would have to have been the picture with him and Grandma Mary, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Probably about the youngest where I've seen him before I've seen this.
Yeah.
So that's like in his mid-20s, you know.
And then there's a few pictures of him in Korea that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's great. It's cool. You see this picture right there, his signature, name, his service number, and then the date. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So going through this NAV 118 personnel packet, they have the index to it, just some miscellaneous information, when his initial gear was issued, when this packet was started, his gas mask size, whether he was a swimmer or not, his blood type, and date of entry into service. Real basic. All right. The first part of this packet, it's just a copy of his enlistment contract, which they had a earlier copy that we saw in the packet earlier. Next, on page 3, they have basically his record of service. So from when he showed up to boot camp in San Diego, actually, the first entry on here is when he enlisted. So it has 13 June 1952. And then it shows when he showed up down in San Diego, which was actually the next day. So it wasn't too bad. The 14th of June, goes through, his schooling, after basic, going to Camp Lejeune, down. I guess the most important thing was his deployment to Korea. He was assigned to Charlie Company, 7th, I think it's Motor Transportation Battalion. He joined them in Korea on December 5th, 1953. And he stayed with them, it looks like, through the rest of his time while in Korea until he got out of the service. So interesting on here, they also have conduct, a way to evaluate, how the person did. They have, with unsat, fair, good, very good, excellent, or outstanding. So he generally had 4s.
Yeah.
It looks like throughout most of his service, which is very good. And then one rating he had of excellent. So he was a decent soldier, or a decent Marine. Didn't look like he got in too much trouble. All right, the next file on page 4 of this packet is the chronological record of primary duties. So this looks like his travel dates, that every time he traveled or was going to school, was on leave, waiting assignment. And then what I highlight on here was 2 things. One, when he went to school in North Carolina to become an auto mechanic. And then 2, he was recorded as an unauthorized absent, or AWOL.
Yeah, I just seen that.
Yeah.
Back on November 9th, 1953. So that was right before he went to Korea. And it shows him just being AWOL for 1 day. So more than likely he was just late or something.
FTR or something.
Yeah. You guys weren't in that much trouble as enlisted guys, right? No AWOLs from you guys?
No.
I did get an Article 15 for fighting.
Whoa. What?
Yeah.
Not you.
What? No, never.
Did you start it or did you just finish it?
I just finished it.
So if you didn't start it, why did you get the Article 15?
Because we both put hands on each other.
Oh, Lord.
And then the fat E5 from CQ had to come upstairs and break it up.
But you didn't start it, so you were minding your own business and another guy started messing with you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
It started at the dumpster, and then he continued to, keep talking trash all the way and followed me up to the door of my barracks room. And he was drunk, and I wasn't having it that night, and that was it.
I'm glad your battalion commander was very forgiving. So.
It wasn't my battalion commander. My battalion commander was on block leave. We were actually getting ready to go to Iraq. So Rear D stuck it to me for that one.
All right. On page 5 of of this packet is promotions and reductions. So it showed that he was promoted twice, once to private first class on August 23rd, 1952, and then later at a temporary rank of the rank of corporal on November 17th, 1954. And I believe that's the same rank he held when he finished up active service.
How do you have a
corporal.
temp rank? I've never heard of something as a temp rank.
I don't know. That's probably something we have to investigate later on.
Yeah.
I don't know why some would be temporary and
Was he like, maybe he was promotable to corporal? Because I know I don't know if the Marine Corps made you do boards back then, but I'm pretty sure the Marine Corps, you have to go to a promotion board to reach corporal.
that's probably a good possibility because 1954, he was still in Korea. So unlike, I think some of our deployments where they still did a lot of that administrative stuff in the, while deployed, they probably didn't do that back then. So it was a temporary promotion.
I mean, I had to temporarily hold down an E5 slot for a while as a specialist.
That's a good point.
But they didn't give me E5 for it, but
Well, you shouldn't have been fighting. That's probably your only mistake.
I redeemed myself and I went E1 to E4 in like 11 months. I just had all the time I had the time in service for everything. I did make it to the promotion board. I did make E4 promotable, but the Army said I was too fat and they took it away from me.
Well, they don't like no fat people.
I guess not.
All right. So another piece of paperwork in this file seems like his memo of appointment promoting him temporarily to corporal, verifying the date of the 1st November 1954, and it was signed by his battalion commander. All right. Next page is his weapons firing record. So he had qualified twice, it looks like, during his 3 years of service on the M1 rifle, and both times he was a marksman.
So
Makes sense. I really don't know if they even had guns back then. For his family, they were pretty poor.
Yeah. I'm going to say, so he was a halfway decent shot, I guess. I mean, that is more of a rifle than, your issued M16 at basic training.
Yeah.
I didn't get the M16.
Did you have to do machine gun, or what was your primary weapon?
After I got on a base, no, I got issued a squad automatic weapon while in basic. I guess that's my fault for choosing that during FTX. But even when I got to my unit, my first unit, they issued me I think it was something they did with all the new guys.
You got a saw too, didn't you?
Yep.
I got a saw too. I carried a saw through Iraq and everything.
I loved it though. I qualified.
I did too. That was I mean, then they gave me an M4 and I was like, I don't want to shoot this.
Right.
I think Anthony, part of that was, I think, because you were so much taller, if you're tall, they stick you with the heavier weapons.
Yeah, the heavier guys with heavier weapons.
Yeah, that was fine. I loved being the saw gunner.
Hey, especially using the sim rounds when we were in Kuwait, that was pretty fun.
Yeah,
those chalk rounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, being the extra gunner isn't fun unless you're deploying with it, Anthony. I do remember that. Remember you?
Yeah, there's that picture of me and you. I had the saw.
Yeah, and Grandma got mad at me because I wasn't helping you with
carry it.
Yeah, I was like, Grandma, he's a private. I'm not helping him.
Yeah,
carry his own damn stuff.
Oh yeah, I was a saw gunner. I love that thing.
They also had me shoot the was it the 40? I think is what they use.
Oh, the 240.
The handgun.
Oh, the 9mm.
Yeah, 9mm. Okay, I couldn't remember if it was still 45 or not. Yeah. But no, I qualified expert with that as well too.
Yeah,
they were actually impressed that I got a headshot using my NVGs because they did it both a day and a night, so that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Did you get to shoot a lot growing up though?
I wouldn't say not a whole lot. I mean, I had the opportunities to. There's like maybe a couple occasions where my friends' dads were like, hey, we're going to shoot in the morning. You want to shoot a gun? Sure, why not? But I think ultimately, like the first time I actually like really shot a gun was probably around the age of like 13, maybe, or around that time, around high school, between middle school and high school is when I probably shot my first gun.
Yeah, I didn't really grow up shooting guns. We had BB gun. That was it.
Yeah, that's mainly what I grew up using a whole lot of the time. The backyard shooting all the magpies.
Yep, capping squirrels.
You guys remember our old house out there in Sierra Road, the big property?
Yeah.
My dad be out there sitting at him because they'd be dive bombing our old dog, attacking him. So he'd be sitting out there with my Red Ryder, popping magpies.
All right, going over to the next file, we have the his military and civilian occupational specialties and education form. Just verifies what his military specialty was, which was auto mechanic. Re-verifies, he only went up to the 8th grade. He last completed school in 1948. And then it has his interesting civilian occupation before joining the service was, I don't know, it says off bearer, which was, it says he removed cases of cantaloupe from the conveyor belt and stacked on the floor, and also caught turkeys and loaded them on the truck. More like was that like the Rocky movie, Chase the Chickens.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, and then on the bottom, they talk about special qualifications. It does annotate that he knew how to speak Spanish, Mexican dialect, that he was rated as fluent in speaking, but only very minimal for reading and writing, which makes sense based off of his, going to school only for the 8th grade. So guess for school, he was only concentrating on English. That's one of the few stories I do remember them telling us when he was alive that, back then, it was pretty racist, and the teachers would hit him with the rulers across the hands. They couldn't speak Spanish in school.
Yeah, I remember hearing the stories about Aunt Matilda and all of them, getting beat up or whatever, chased out at schools, when they were in high school and whatnot.
Yeah.
And that was just recent too, that I started hearing those stories.
Going back to, I guess, what you guys were talking about, his preference for duty looks like a motor transportation for number 1 and then infantry 2. And of course, the recruiter recommended duty assignment as infantry number 1. So I guess he lucked out and got his choice.
Right.
Yeah.
So like Andrew, you said you didn't have much of a choice when you came in, right? It was kind of like all that was left based on what you qualified for.
It is pretty much what I qualified. But when I went in there, that's ultimately what I wanted, was infantry, like an idiot. But
what about you, Anthony? Did you have an idea going in what you wanted to do, or just see what they offered you?
I wanted to do infantry, but I was signing up at 17, and my parents wouldn't let me pick that. So my recruiter's like, I can get you a job that's basically infantry, things you hear people say.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you sign up as one of these, tank mechanics or track mechanics, you're going to go and do what you want to do. He's like, you're going to see and do things you want to do. He's like, look into things like, recovery schools and things like that. And I got all that. I went to, Hotel 8 school for M88, and then went to Hotel 8 school for the Wrecker. Got to go on missions.
Pretty fun learning how to drive those bigger vehicles.
Oh yeah, I love my 88.
Looks like one of the spare documents also in this file. It has Grandpa's course completion certificate for auto mechanic school. Next page, on I think page 9 of the form, they talk about his expeditions, engagements, combat record. So on here it has him participating in the defense of UN positions in Korea from December 5th, 1953 to February 13th, 1955, it looks like.
Yeah, looks like 5 or 6. I can't tell.
It has to be 5 because he got out in 55, I think.
It's just that line from whatever that smudge is making it look like it's 6.
Yeah, so, looking it up online, he arrived right after the armistice. So right when basically the day-to-day fighting had ceased, I think a few weeks or a few months just before he got there. And then on the bottom it has his medals that he earned, which is the National Defense Service Medal, the Korean Service Medal, the UN Service Medal, and the Good Conduct Medal.
How do you get good conduct with being AWOL for a day?
It's probably
that's probably what you said. He's probably FTR.
Yeah. Probably blew over real quick.
The shops forgot to put that in, as they always do tend to lose paperwork.
You're right. I got out and still got a good conduct medal.
Oh, hold on, there it is. Wait, okay. All right, so the next piece of paperwork, they have his certificate for the good conduct medal. It says Corporal Gregorio Paez. First award, period of service June 1952 to June 1955. Yeah, so
Sounds like
basically when he enlisted to when he got out. So I mean,
yeah.
I guess it wasn't too serious. So it is what it is. Page 10, civilian background, education. Just verifies what we already knew, how long he went to school, his job before joining, and the languages he learned. So nothing new on this form. All right, page 11, administrative remarks. So on the administrative remarks, it shows, when he first came in, he learns about the basics of the UCMJ. His pulleys numbers aren't one across the board, so I guess he was a 2 for S. Do you guys remember what S is?
I don't.
Huh. I have to look that one up. Yeah, it just talks about him in school, retraining on the articles of the UCMJ, completed course, operated 2.5-ton truck, and yep, that's about it. Okay, here's the golden one right here. Page
Offenses
where
and
are we on?
punishments.
Page 12. Yeah, offenses and punishments. Okay, so it has his AWOL date for 12 November 1953. All right, so his absent reported dated 10 November. All right, so he showed up again. So he showed up the same day. So like Andrew was saying, he probably just failed to report for duty. But I think they were okay. So reading through this, so on the 21st, they were already aboard. So he probably missed movement. So they're getting ready to go to Korea on the Navy ship. And he probably missed the formation or something.
The first formation for movement.
Yeah, because it shows him on the 21st and it says they're already aboard the ship. And he got Article 15, 24 hours extra duty. So it really wasn't that much.
Yeah.
So, well, see, congratulations, Anthony. You're not the only one in the family with Article 15. So
that's okay.
All right. The next portion of his file, updated DD93 emergency contact forms. Look just like us. It looks like he had to update them every year or so.
Yeah, that's kind of like when we go to what is it, SRP?
Mm-hmm.
Update all your personal info.
Yeah, looks like there's about three copies in here, so that's probably what it is. All right. Another portion of this file, leave record, just talks about his days accrued and then the periods he took on leave. So nothing too serious. All right. Page 17, the sea and air travel embarkation slip. So this shows, I guess, when he did sea duty, which was the only time it looks like he was on the Navy ships was when he went over to Korea and when he came back. So on here it says he embarked aboard the United States Navy ship General House at San Diego, California, 15 November 1953, and departed from there at 1600. Yeah, so he more than likely missed his movement, probably when they were loading the ship, and that's where he got his AWOL from. Okay, it said arrived and disembarked at Incheon, Korea on the 4th of December 1953. And then it says he actually came back on the same ship back to the United States. So he loaded back up on the USS Howes at Incheon on February 16th, 1955, and arrived in San Francisco on March 4th, 1955. So what's that, about a little more than a 2-week ride from Korea to California?
Yep, I couldn't imagine being on a boat that long.
Yeah.
I think it's like, what is it to Iraq, Gabe? Like 18 hours or something like that?
It was a long while.
It was.
Depends where your stops were.
No.
We went from Colorado. I think we ended up in
Maine. Did you go to Ireland next or Germany?
I think, I can't remember. It was one or the other.
I stopped in a different country each time I came and went. The first time we stopped in Ireland, and then when I was going home on R&R, I stopped in Germany, and then on our way back in, I stopped in England, I think, and then went in all that between there and like Kuwait.
Yeah. I can't remember. Go ahead, Andrew.
So I got to stop in Ireland on the way to Kuwait, and then on the way back from Jordan, we got to stop in Germany.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember there was like this warrant officer when we stopped in Germany. He was guarding the liquor aisle in the
Sure.
And then I was going on leave with one of our staff sergeants, and he's like, "Come on, Pius, just go distract him." I was like, "What is it? What is a PFC gonna go talk to the CW3 about?"
It's like we had a.
He was trying to get a bottle of absinthe.
Yeah, that's what we were trying to do. But okay, so here's what was some jacked up. One of my battle buddies, actually, he was able to get some for his wife, and he was of age. We had deployed like a month after I had turned 21, and so I'm like, cool, I'm gonna buy me some absinthe too. Why not? Nope. He told me, Pius, what are you doing? You sure you're old enough to drink that? Yeah, it's been about a month. Nope, didn't get to buy absinthe. It was kind of sad.
That's why you gotta make friends with older people.
That's the sad thing is that I was. I was told by specialists I was too good at shaman for a PFC, or no, for a mosquito wing. That's what it was.
That means you need to back away from the mafia.
All right. In the last parts of his Navy personnel file, Marine Corps personnel file, they have some various records for discharge from active duty. So it says he's transferred into the Marine Corps Reserve on June 13th, he enlisted in June 13th, 1952. And then his term of service, so his 8-year period that everyone has to sign up for, would end on June 12th, 1960. So he was left active duty and then looks like he was sent to the Ready Reserve. Let's see. He had some orders saying, okay, so he was released from active duty on 12 June 1955, went to the Class 3 Ready U.S. Marine Corps Reserve, and just kind of gave him a place in San Francisco, a unit in San Francisco he had to report to. Looks like he had a mailing address in Broderick, California, which is West Sacramento. It's probably his brother's address. Uncle Jesse lived in West Sacramento, so it's more likely his address. So he was already in California, so he didn't need any transportation. He had his own car. And then other forms, just basic security classification, certification, just, hey, can't release any secret information even after you're out of the service. A receipt for his money that he got when he separated, mustering out payment. I guess it said there's a Veteran Readjustment Assistance Act of 1952, so more than likely they provided some extra money for folks who got out since the Korean War just ended. And that's the main part of his personnel file. For the rest of his OMPF, it's just various files. At some point, he looked at enlisting in the California Army National Guard, so just various memos he took to get released from the Marine Corps Reserve. I'm not too sure, how that went about or whatever happened to that.
I don't remember hearing anything about that.
And then just the only other thing in his file was his individual clothing record, which I thought was pretty interesting. He saw everything he was issued at basic training, and then he got a couple more things, before he went to Korea.
Look at the prices of those then, and now the price of what you had to pay of losing something, as opposed to now.
Yeah, it cost me like $400 to clear CIF when I got out.
Yeah, it's about what it cost me because someone stole my chicken vest.
Yeah, someone stole my my middle layer of one of my sleeping bags.
Yeah. Any final thoughts about his service?
I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I did learn about things. I didn't know Uncle Jesse's name was Jesus to begin with. I didn't know that they lived on the farm that they worked at.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. And then, like you said, his CIF record. Notice he was AWOL for a day.
Yeah, that's probably the one thing I didn't know. Is he went AWOL for one day. But other than that, I pretty much knew a lot of the stuff from ancestry, what we've gone over through the years between you and my dad, and then me and Allie getting on there and doing the stuff ourselves.
As the World War II generation, they had that fire at the National Archives where all these military personnel records were kept. We're lucky, he was in the Marine Corps, so his file existed. So once he requested his file, it came back a few months later, and it's just a treasure trove of information we're able to keep and find out about.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, if there's nothing else, thank you for joining me on this episode, and it's great talking to you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
Talk to you guys later. Love you.
Love you.
Take care.
You guys too.
All right.
Bye.
If you'd like what you've heard and would like to support our podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast player you're listening to us on. The positive reviews help others find the show. Please visit our website at campironmountain.com and subscribe to our email list. On our website, you will also find the links to join our private Facebook group and other social media sites. Stop by and leave a comment, ask questions, or provide ideas for future podcasts. Join our efforts to preserve the important memories of our veterans and civilians for future generations.